Welcome, dear shareholders, to the Chris Corporation Quarter Report, because our only goal here is to please the shareholders. So anyways, this report covers the period from June the 2nd to February the 1st, because this is the first report and my investing that I started in June. During today's agenda, we will reveal the performance, so basically how much money did I invest in total, what is the portfolio worth right now, percentage return, compare some benchmarks, like what if I invested the same amount of money on the same dates into S&P 500 or Bitcoin. Then we will break down my best performing investments, my worst performing, and general overview by category like cases, skins, charms, and timing. And also my current market view. So over the past few months, I've been investing real money into CS2 skins. To be exact, I invested $11,466 in total. And today I'm showing you how exactly that performed. I also cleaned up the portfolio into multiple sections to make the data as clean and transparent as possible. So first, let's talk about free money. I still own around 600 worth of old CSGO items from when I was playing in 2014. Mostly Gamma cases, Operation Breakout, Falchion, Phoenix weapon cases. Most of the play skins I had back then were lost on CSGO Lounge, so if you know, you know. And across my free active accounts, I also received about $50 in weekly drops. So in total, that's roughly $650 of value coming purely from playing the game, being early, and never selling anything. Basically, that's the privilege of being an onk. And my Armory Pass investments are currently valued at $2,265, and I invested roughly $1,400, which gives me a return of about 61.5%. This is extremely high. However, I made a big mistake early on. I did not properly arbitrage Steam funds, which means the profit could have been significantly higher. And at the moment, I still have around $460 worth of Armory stars, so that's around 1,300 stars. So in total, I owned roughly 5,500 Armory stars, which was honestly more than I expected. And the biggest winners were the Character Craft sticker collection. And honestly, I don't expect the next series to be ever this profitable, but who knows. And then the biggest losers, the most ugliest charms, Dr. Boom. I really regret redeeming them. I don't know how much I lost. I don't even want to check, but it was for sure not profitable. And that's also the only two collections I redeemed, besides the M4 Solitude. Out of all the redemptions I did, I broke even and ended up with 2 free factory new Solitudes as a result. At this moment, they are pretty much worthless. They're like 40 euros and they are not rare at all. And then when it comes to core investment performance, out of total amount of $9,300 that was actively invested, the current value of that portfolio is approximately $10,400. That's a return of 12% in 3 to 6 months, which is still very solid considering everything happening globally, like with stocks or crypto, and obviously the CS2 market volatility. And most of my plays are centered towards the new armor rotation, so that doesn't help either. So let's summarize everything. In total, I invested $11,466. Current inventory value is at around 13,308. That's a profit of $1,842, which equals roughly 16% of return. And keep in mind, this is while we are entering a correction or a bear market. In a bullish environment, this percentage would have been way higher. And now here comes the interesting part. Let's compare this to traditional markets. So first, Bitcoin. If I had invested the same amount into Bitcoin, I would have accumulated roughly 0.12 Bitcoins. At today's Bitcoin's price of about 68,300, that portfolio would have now been worth around 7,894. That means a loss of almost $3,600, which comes to a negative return of 31%. So basically, you're cooked. And now let's look at the S&P 500. And you're like, what is S&P 500? Well, it's an index that tracks the 500 largest public traded companies in the United States, like Tesla, Microsoft, etc. So that's pretty much the holy grail of investments for people that don't want to risk, but pretty much guarantee profit long term. So using the same total investment, I would have accumulated about 1.7 stocks of the S&P 500, and at the current S&P price of roughly 6,879, that portfolio would now be worth around 11,361, and that's a loss of $93, so a return of negative 0.8. So what we can say is CS2 just didn't outperform it. It absolutely destroyed both investments over a very short and volatile period. And my biggest winners were actually play skins I bought randomly. These were mostly luck with zero brains involved. That's why I often tell people who don't invest, instead of overthinking, just do it. So a few examples are my favorite gun, Pantera Onca, that I bought for 518 and now they are 910. AK Jaguar bought for 350, now they're 560. This is the juiciest one. Glock Gold Tooth bought for $41, now $190. That's a return of 360%. That's actually really mental and extremely rare and crazy in that short of a period. And then nothing special. M4 Player 2 bought for $134, now $245. So really nice random money. And then the second biggest winners were discontinued cases, which were obviously previously rare. I bought many of these during the trade-up update crash on the Chinese market. Best examples were the Prisma 2 cases, bought 381 cases for 80 cents, now they are $1.34. Also Horizon case, bought 300 pieces for $1.07, now they are $1.44. I also hold tons of Chroma cases, Winter Offensive and Falchions. And honestly, I wish I bought more discontinued cases while they were still in the rare drop pool, but honestly, nobody could have predicted that. And then we have neutral performers like fewer cases, charms, armory stickers. They have not seen a catalyst yet. They're currently all sitting around 5% return or 5% negative return, so nothing unexpected. Fewer cases are still really interesting long term, especially now since some marketplaces list them as low as 65 cents, which is extremely low in my opinion. Now for the pain. Bayonet Lore, $780 to $449. That's a loss of 42%. Driver gloves, Queen Jaguar, priced at $666. Now they are $555. Not that painful, and this was obviously due to the effect of the knife trade-up update. And honestly, I genuinely feel bad for people who went heavy into high-tier items. They probably lost more than Bitcoin did. Some of my worst calls were investing into active drop pool cases like Seal Genesis Terminal and Recall cases. Currently, the losses range from around 15 to 16%. It sounds way worse than it is because it's only minus $100 on both entries. That said, I'm probably doubling down on Recall cases right now, since some marketplaces are showing prices as low as 24 cents. Seal Genesis Terminal could also be good entry in the near future to average down, but honestly, it's extremely risky asset to have, especially if you don't have decent portfolio to cover the losses. I'd honestly do one thing differently. I would have aggressively spam bought discontinued cases and ignored most of active drops entirely. Discontinued cases preserve value insanely well, and the removal of the rare drop table is way more significant than most people think. I genuinely expect these cases to turn into luxury assets over the next years. And yes, this is kind of tinfoil hat moment, but if you look at the current listing counts and the historical data from CS Stonks, the supply of Winter Offensive weapon case is getting extremely low. And looking ahead, I expect a new armory rotation in about 2 months, which means I should be able to harvest some profits and most likely reinvest them in discontinued cases. And one thing I would recommend though, stay away from investing more than 1k into stickers or charms. Personally, I think that's absolute maximum those should make up in a portfolio. I really don't believe they will deliver the crazy returns I initially expected, but that's just my gut feeling. Now let's talk about the current market. If we look at the Steam DT market index, which tracks a weighted selection of skins that actually reflect real market behavior. Since December, the index has been going lower and lower, dropping from around 1300 points to 1.1k. That's the lowest level in the past 5 months, even below the levels we saw after the October crash recovery. Final note for today is my original goal for this channel was to buy a house for $500,000, but a birdie told me there's a Jeffrey Epstein dragon lore, and I regret to inform you, this is now the new goal. Thank you for attending the quarterly report. Meeting is finished.